Hey, how are you doing? Welcome to Rockinboxes Presents. I am Sean, Rockinboxes, guys. Thanks very much. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. Oh man, my guest this week is, wow, coming off of a spectacular Friday the 13th. Let me tell you guys, the premiere of Never Hike Alone, guys. I have with me the director. He's an actor, writer, and anyway, guys, please welcome to the show this week, Vincent DiSanti from Never Hike Alone. Vincent, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Sean, and hello, everybody. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you, man. This is like, whoa. Okay, so I just wanted to first off say thanks very much in spending the time to come in here. I know how busy you were, and I know how busy you are just coming off of this premiere. Now, it wasn't a premiere that was in theaters, mind you, but it was on YouTube, and let me tell you something. Oh my gosh! I mean, we're talking a killer of a killer film. Like, dude. Oh, okay. So Never Hike Alone. Let's get into it and let's talk a little bit about it. So first off, my first question to you is, where did it all come about? How did it all come about?
I mean, if you really want to go there, it all came about when I was, 7, 8 years old, walking down the horror section and turning and seeing, like, at that time, I think all 8 films were out at that point, the first Paramount 8, and they were all sitting there just staring at me. And I was just so enveloped by The Mask. And Jason, ever since I saw my first Friday the 13th when I was a kid, Jason became, this symbol of fear for me. And, we got the last film we got was 2009. And, if you had asked me before I moved out here to Los Angeles to pursue a career in film, if I could work on one project, what would it be? It would be Friday the 13th. And so I just moved out here when they were making 2009. I didn't have a chance to interview to go work on that film or do anything like that. And then I was kind of always hoping that my career would take me towards Friday the 13th. And in this drought that we've been in for so long, I started to think and be like, the way the industry works, the way things work, I'm probably just never going to get a chance to do this. I should just do something on my own. I should make a 20-minute short, build a costume, have some fun with my friends, and just do it and get it out of my system. And, I would say about maybe 3 years ago is when I started to really pursue this. I started to build my own costume, my first cosplay, and it looked okay. But I learned, and I started from the ground. I mean, I don't want people to think that we came in and we just that film looked that way from the beginning and we were just always there. It took a long time to, of failing and working really hard to get it to look even that good. I mean, 3 years ago, we tried to shoot something and it didn't come out that great. And I wasn't really happy with it. And I wasn't really happy with myself. And instead of giving up, I kind of reset and said, you know what, I think I have to go back and reteach myself some things and really pay attention a little bit more to a couple things and let's see how I can make this better. And from there, I just started working on more independent features and shorts and things like that and figuring my way into it. And then I'd say about early last winter, kind of like the break of 2015 and 2016, I'd been doing more shorts and building a crew. And I was like, you know what, this might be a good time to pull up Friday the 13th. A new Friday the 13th is coming out. It's going to be in it's going to be in discussions. And if we, put together a nice little short that people will like, we can kind of come out around the same time as the film is going to come out. And maybe a few people will check it out. And we'll be able to celebrate Friday the 13th in our own way. We'll make our own film and move on. And in that time, the film got canceled. And fans were disappointed. I was disappointed. And as we were working on Never Hike Alone, I don't know, I started to get more emails and more messages from fans encouraging us to, make it longer, really believing in the idea and really hoping that, this Friday the 13th, they were going to get something that was worth watching. So we kind of took that pressure and used it to motivate ourselves to push the envelope. So when we went out there, we didn't just settle. We went and we were like, we're going to do this right. We're going to put all of our effort into it. I mean, I left my job in December so I could run the Kickstarter full time because it's a full-time job to do that. And then run this job, run this film, off the cuff while everyone else kept working so I could shepherd it. And that's when I realized I was like, yeah, you know what? No one's ever going to give you a shot to direct a Friday the 13th film, especially if you've never directed anything other than shorts that have gone online. So just go for it. Just go and make something the best you can, and let's just see where it lands. And the response since it has landed has been like far exceeding my expectations. It's been extremely positive. You know, people are really rallying behind it. And for me, I'm just really happy to see Friday the 13th fans happy.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're going to hear me say this a lot during this interview because I don't know, you know what, you had a beautifully, it was beautifully done in an organic way. It brought you back, the whole aspect brought us back to what 1980 would have been, you know, the first Friday, the second, the third, where there was no CGI. And, you know, I was impressed by the whole, okay, first off, let me say, I'm a vlogger. So I go out and, hey, look at, this is Niagara Falls. Hey, check this out. This is the CN Tower. Hey, you know, here we are in the Canadian Rockies kind of thing, or here we are somewhere in the US. And aspect of Kyle, your, I had his name here, the main actor, he comes
Andrew
out
Lady?
with,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. And he comes out with this camera, and it's like he's vlogging an area of where he's at, and it brought you to, it gave you that real great feel of being within the woods myself as a vlogger. And I know there's a lot of people out there that are watching that are vloggers that, you know, if they go and watch this film, they'll understand exactly what I mean. But and I guys, I encourage you, you know, it's on Womsnom Films. Go check it out. You guys will be like blown away. But just the whole organic of it, and that was obviously your goal, no? To bring us back to a time of what Friday should have been after part, I'm gonna say part 5, 4, maybe.
No, I mean, I would go as far as to say like part 8. I mean, for me, I love all 8 Paramount films. I don't hold a grudge against any of those films for whatever reason. Like, I don't care that Tina's like got like telekinetic powers, or that Manhattan didn't really work out the way they wanted. I've always found joy in those films. I always found a tone in those films that I was really able to get into. And even though they, you know, I have my favorites and I have my least favorites, the least favorites are still movies that I'll watch again and again and again, and never, you know, and never not smile through the entire time. And really what I wanted to feel, I was like, I think that like we were getting into an era where we kept trying to reinvent the wheel. And I think for a long time, you know, that's why I think it kind of came after part 8, where it was like, it doesn't matter that they turned out the way they did. I just wanted to feel like that era kind of ended, and then it stopped. And finally it just went dormant. And the people of Crystal Lake were able to kind of keep people out of there for the most part. Who knows what happened in between for those like 20 years that we were dormant. But basically that this is a place that's been put to sleep. And the legend has been put to sleep, kind of like the franchise was. And, you know, there's a little bit of a metaphor in there for where the franchise is in this time as well, is that it's lost and forgotten. And people don't really remember what it is and really what it's about. It just seems to be everyone wants to tell a new story about Friday the 13th. And I didn't think that that's what fans wanted. Fans wanted to feel like they were getting off at the same bus stop. It was just 20 years later, and it looks a little different. You know, things are a little overgrown and it's not quite the same, but you recognize a lot of the same qualities, and they carry over in the tones, and not trying to erase the past, but embrace it and build on top of it and say, it's not that hard. I know there's weird continuity things, but if you just kind of do what every Friday the 13th does and kind of go, all right, there's a little bit of a reset here. Sure, there's little nuances of things that aren't going to really line up because certain films did certain things and they won't ever really line up. But just if you remember the story, and if you remember the lore and you remember the curse, that you will get this film, and you'll feel like you went back and this was something that could have tied into the original franchises, and kind of go with that approach without trying to, you know, try to create something new. I wanted to work with the elements that were there and just show them from a different perspective and give them a different light.
Yeah, and like I said, the organics of it was amazing because the familiarities of all the different areas where the crime scenes actually happen. The first one that really took me was the bunk bed scene.
Cool.
Oh yeah, because we all know Kevin Bacon. You know, it's surprising that Kevin didn't last as long as, you know, he should have in the movie. But I guess back in that day, I guess they figured everybody was just going to be totally wiped out in the film, and. You know, but just the whole bunk bed. I mean, for you to go and the idea of all of it, how it gelled, where you had those little tags in and around. Sorry, I'm giving a little bit away.
No, it's okay. No, I've talked about this before too. I think people should be aware that when we go to Camp Crystal Lake, what I wanted it to feel like, and if you go back and look at the films, maybe aside from part 6, and you can kind of figure out whether that they really did rebuild Camp Crystal Lake or they built a new camp for Forest Green or what happened there. I wanted to play into a world where no one ever went back to Camp Crystal Lake. The place is so... People are so scared of that land and that property that they won't build anything there. They won't go out there. It's off the map. All the trails that lead to it are off the map, and they don't want anybody out there. And the people of the people of Crystal Lake know that place is cursed, and they know not to mess with it. So when Steve Christie dies, they're not going to let anyone else go back up there. They're never going to let anyone else go there. So they cut it off, and it just so happens that our character finds it. So when he finds it, my thought was, hey, 37 years ago, think about like small town police. They have to deal with a mass murder of 8 people. They're understaffed. They are scared shitless because they're already scared of this place. And they're in this just blood-filled camp with all these bodies. Who's going to stick around and clean that place up? So you can imagine the cleanup crew really didn't do a good job. They just dragged the bodies out of there, tried to board up as much as they could, and got the hell out. And so there's still blood stains and there's still things. And when, the first time I walked through the camp that we found that we actually ended up shooting at, there was a red ribbon floating on a tree. And it caught my eye as I was walking through, and it kind of spooked me because I thought something was moving in the forest, and I saw this little tag. And that's kind of what that scene where it shows the Steve Christie crime scene. Yeah, that's what that was inspired by, and that was an actual tag that was always flying there, and we just put a number on it and built the rest of that, the piece of that. So it was something that I thought, like, that's kind of interesting. Like, let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's remind people of how this all got started. This all got started because the mother lost her son, and she went crazy and she killed 8 people. Yeah. And to go through that and have Kyle discover that becomes even more, juicy for him if he's going to do a vlogging episode, being able to show off this stuff that's still there, and that there were so many bodies that, so they wouldn't walk through a crime scene unknowingly, they were hanging up these tags as a warning to be like, okay, you're about to enter a crime scene. Don't contaminate it. Don't, watch yourself. You could, slip on blood or whatever. And kind of give it that sense. So that way, as we're moving through the camp and we're doing stuff, we're not just showing rooms, but we're giving you a variety of things that are there to kind of make you think about, like, wow, if this was, a real life event, the same thing as like the Charles Manson murders, or, Jim Jones and all that stuff. It was like things that were actually a part of society. And then they get forgotten about. And if you ask somebody about Jim Jones now, they'd probably be able to tell you about Kool-Aid, and that's about it. If they ask, if they ask about Charles Manson, they'll probably know that he's crazy, but they probably wouldn't be able to tell you the details of what the actual crime scene was. So that's where Andrew comes in. And Andrew's a naive kind of, millennial who heard about this stuff in the past and has heard about it, but it's so long ago, and all the stories about that followed after it are so unbelievable. I mean, those things don't happen in real life. So what am I to be afraid of? And obviously he is a little scared. He doesn't try to show it too much to his fans, but we see that through the other lens. We just wanted to give it that feel of that, like, he felt like this was going to be something that he could use, and it just turns around on him.
Yeah, for sure. And you could tell by, the whole tag thing, and then there was Easter eggs. There were Easter eggs as well that gave that old feel of that they were left for, and anyway, oh man, I don't want to get into too much of it, because I really do feel that everybody out there should go and watch this film, and then you'll see exactly what we're talking about right now, why we can't really get into the whole, there's too many little secrets that are just fantastic about this film. It was fantastic. I'm going to, there's a crowd of people here that are chiming in, and they want to know a couple of things. So the one question was, how were you able to get all of the action in like just an hour? That's one of the questions, because it just seems so packed with the great. I mean, obviously the vlogging aspect, but there's more to it afterwards. That just like more action.
Well, I mean, the action actually moves pretty quickly. Once you get into action, there's a lot of quick cutting. There's a lot of quick shots. It moves fast. We wanted to ramp up the stunts, a way. I mean, we start off with a big stunt That was a lot of fun to do. And go in there. And I think like the first 20 minutes we wanted to set it up, and I'd never really intended it to even be as long as it was. I meant for it to be shorter. But when we had, I think I was getting a message every other day that was like 22 minutes is not long enough. And I went, well, okay, like you want to give us more money so we can hire, like go out and do and spend more money doing this. And then the more thought I put to it, and the more, I don't know, just the more I thought about it, I was like, I think there are ways that I can expand this without spending too much money. So the bunk bed scene you're talking about, that wasn't originally in the original script. That was something I wrote on the spot, and kind of had the idea for it. I was like, man, this would be one crime scene I would love to have, but the camp didn't have any bunk beds. So what did I have? I had a bunch of steel cots. I had a bunch of wood around the camp. And so I went up there with a buddy of mine, and we built those bunk beds by hand. There's actually, if you go on our Instagram, you can go back a couple of months and you'll see a time lapse of us actually building the bunk beds and building that set. Him and I were the same ones. We built the Camp Crystal Lake sign together. We went up there, we found some boards, we pulled them off the walls. I got a bunch of, old sticks, and we arranged them out and cut them up and measured them out and built that. It was a lot of just going up and just kind of piecing it together, like little by little on my own, and building things on my own. And then once everything was ready to shoot, we'd bring the crew up, we'd shoot through, get the footage, log it up, and move on to the next scene. With getting that much action or not making it any longer, I mean, I think this premise was not meant to be an hour and a half. If you pitch this premise to me, a one-on-one with Jason Voorhees, I think that a long period of time could make it stale. And so our task was, how can we lead people through and lengthen it and keep it interesting? So we did that with the tags and just showing people different areas of Camp Crystal Lake and familiar areas and things like that. And that once the action started, we could just let the action take over and let it carry it out from there with a few little character moments in between and building up some surprises. And then all leading towards the ending, which was a good, I think it's like 6-7 minutes just alone, just that final scene, and the lead up to it kind of being, this big thing. And so we really wanted to like build it up as, look at this small fan film, and then slowly just raise production value as we kept going. So we kept having different surprises around every turn, things you wouldn't expect from a fan film. And we wanted to hold those secrets close, so people went into this with an expectation, and then we were able to exceed it because we just didn't give it away. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why we're going to get we're going to touch a little bit on the ending, but not too much, because man, oh man, what a killer ending. Unbelievable. So someone, Aaron's asking, just Aaron says, when casting the actors, what do you look for telltale signs that these could be great, to let me see. Let me read this right. So when casting your characters, what were some of the things you looked for that were telltale signs they could do the horror genre justice? There we go.
Everybody who acted in this film, I know personally. So I've worked with them in the past, in a certain way. There's a couple people that have been in, a previous short of mine. So I just knew them and they were great. And I've known Andrew for, I want to say 5-6 years now. And he was actually my PA on another film. And he said he was an actor. And I was like, that's awesome. And then the more I got to know him and the more I kind of got to know his personality and who he was, I could see that he had a lot of potential. I mean, he's got the look. The guy is like, my God, like if I could be that good looking for just one day. And I knew that he had the personality. I know he had the look, and it was just about giving him an avenue and something to do that would show those skills. And so that was kind of part of it. I knew the confessionals were going to be a good way for the audience to really fall in love with him. And we worked together really hard on his performance and the way he came across and the things he would do and the things he wouldn't do and who he was. And he was just really receptive, and he always wanted to give his best. And it kind of was one of those things where we just believed in each other. He believed in me as a director, and I believed in him as an actor. And it was the two of us doing a lot of that stuff, just me and him. And, I think it came down to trust. And you just feel it when you talk to people and you're working with them and they get it. And, you're out there in the field and, fire is raining down from all ends. And it's the people that you look off to your left and right with that they're right there with you and they're keeping up. and you don't have to worry about them. And Andrew's definitely one of those guys. And everyone else was, you know, I know they have the acting chops, and it was about kind of coming up with, you know, fun performances, and I won't go into it. Like, there's a reason why some of the performances feel a little weird. And it's because I wanted, as the film goes on, to feel more and more like a traditional Friday. So we kind of went into that tone at the end a little bit, just to kind of give it that spin to feel like I won't say anything, but like, that it kind of just happens that he's there. And he's found himself now fully engulfed in the franchise, where at the beginning, you don't feel like you're in a Friday the 13th film. You don't really feel like you're in it until about, I would say, halfway in, that you're like, oh yeah, this is a Friday the 13th film. And that was intentional. I wanted to distract the audience away and make them feel like, well, what is this? And then surprise them with it. And that's kind of what it was. I wanted, just like the character, the audience is going along with his story from his POV. And so he, you know, at some point in the film discovers like, oh, this is real and this is going to happen and I better do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned halfway through, I'd say at the 27:20 mark of the movie, I had it marked down here. You know, the Jason is introduced, and then Andrew Lady, you know, he really meets his match. You know, let's talk a little bit about Jason's aggressivity and how aggressive he was during the fight sequence. If we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a dynamic there. And, you know, at the beginning of the film, like, we introduced, I think, Jason around the 13-minute mark, which was pretty fun. No, actually, I think we discovered something else around a little bit before that.
Yeah, well, sorry to say, but I mean, yeah, like, I mean.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But what I was going to say is leading up to that moment, you'll notice that, you know, Kyle's walking out in the open and Jason's not really doing much. He's just watching him. And that was purposeful because Jason, you know, I didn't want him to be mindless. I didn't want him to just, you know, go into robot mode and just start killing. I think that there was, you know, after being out in the woods for 30 years without anybody really giving him any shit, here's this guy. What is he doing here? Like, what is he up to? You know, he's not running around and smoking weed. He's not throwing boobs all over the place. You know, he's not out there with a bunch of chicks trying to have an orgy. He's just walking around. He's not breaking any of the Friday the 13th rules. And I think from Jason's perspective, he's kind of curious of what is this guy and what is he doing and what is he talking to and what is going on here. And I think as long as he kept a safe distance from the things that mean the most to Jason and he stays out of his kind of little area, that Kyle might have been able to kind of go in and out of there and never have to deal it. It's just that we wanted to lead him deeper and deeper into, you know, the maze. And then once he does kind of cross the line and Jason comes after him, and that's when Jason goes, okay, now I need to take action and I need to kill this guy. And so he comes after him. And the other thing too is that Jason notices that this guy isn't like the typical teenage fodder either. Like, he's athletic, he's armed, and one false move and this guy's going to get away. And that's the worst thing that could happen to Jason. If Jason somehow loses his grip on this guy gets the right knife hit in and he lets him go and he runs off in the woods and runs all the way back to Crystal Lake and says, you know, the British, like, Jason's coming. Like, you know, the next thing you know, you're going to have the cavalry rolling out there, a bunch of cops, and, you know, we're going to have, you know, Jason goes to hell all over again. He's going to get exploded. So from his perspective, he's like, if I'm going to kill this guy, I got to get him trapped and I got to make sure he can't get away. And then once, you know, they do that and Drew is able, you know, Kyle, the character, is able to at least survive the initial attack, it just starts it, and it starts the cat and mouse. And one of our backers, this guy, Matthew Barrett, he was one of our executive producers. He was a backer in Kickstarter. And because he did at the executive producer level, I had a chance to talk to him. And while I was talking to him, I was like, well, you know, what's your favorite Friday? And what, you know, what about this film, you know, do you like, or like, what is it that really drew you to come in and be an EP? And he said, you know what, I really love part 3. And I love part 3 because the chase scene with Chris Higgins at the end, the one-on-one, is one of the longest one, if not the longest one in the series for final girl sequences. And I always loved that, you know, he was telling me, I always loved the constant pursuit, that it was just Jason kept coming and kept coming and kept coming, and you couldn't stop. And he was, you know, he's smashing his head through the van window. He's coming in through the barn. He's chasing her around the house, you know, all these different things. And it just never stopped. And I just loved that adrenaline rush. So I really took that to heart, and I went, you know what, let's make sure that we get that. Let's get the initial shock. Let's get the initial attack. And then let's keep that constant pressure of him coming and coming, never stopping. And, you know, and no matter what Kyle does, it just doesn't seem to put this thing down. You can't stop him. And all you can really do is slow him down enough to get away. And we really wanted to bring that type of Jason where he kind of had that intensity and the power from parts 6 through 8, with the aggressiveness from parts 3 and 4. So, you know, so he had the ability to move a little bit faster. I mean, I play Jason, I'd say about 60% of the film, and Brian Forrest, who is my stunt double, who handled a lot of the fighting, did, I would say, like, I don't know, I'd say it's almost like 50-50 split the way we ended up doing it. But I did some of the kind of keyer scenes, like I'm the first like, yeah, I don't know, I don't want to get into it. But, but most of all, it was that, you know, I wanted to remind people that, like, Jason doesn't have to be slow, but he doesn't have to run to be fast. He's tall, you know, he's got a long stride. And once he gets those legs moving, he's going to rip through the forest pretty fast and nothing's going to stop him. He's got a lot of girth. He's got a lot of weight, and he's able to just kind of blast through stuff and nothing getting in his way. And he knows the shortcuts around. So no matter how fast Drew runs, he's eventually going to be able to either cut him off or catch up in some way, shape, or form. And he's going to have to stop running eventually. Like, he's going to run out of energy, and Jason never runs out of energy. He just keeps coming and coming. As long as he just keeps his pace, he'll eventually catch up. And so we really wanted to bring that, like, that aggressiveness of that Jason's coming at you, and Jason's coming after this character and constantly pursuing him. And, you know, you never had a chance to take a breath. And the moment you think you get a rest, that he's going to come and get you again. And that was something I wanted to do, to push the suspense and push the terror and really make Jason scary again.
Yeah, and you know what? You really brought that element back of the lurkiness, you know, in the beginning of the movie, where Jason, you know, like you said, he was scoping him out, and he was just, what's he doing in my woods? What's he doing? You know, I haven't seen somebody in like forever, kind of thing. And that was really key to what Jason is as a character. And then obviously, you know, now you're on my turf. Now you're going through my buildings. Now you're dead.
Yeah, now you're dead.
Yeah, essentially. I will get to some of the questions. Other people have been asking some questions. I just really wanted to say that Jerry and I, we watched the film, and you know, Jerry was the one that put together the promo at Tribulation Studios. I love him. He's my partner. He's a great guy. He wanted to just say, you know, the camera angles, the depth, the editing, the whole backdrop, you know, everything was phenomenally so well done. Those aerial shots, everything was just wow. And how it all blended and gelled, and of course with the editing and that. You want to talk a little bit about the editing and what that process was? I know how.
Yeah, no, it's the process is great. We had 2 editors on this film because there's a lot of work to do in a short time. So we enlisted a good friend of mine. His name's Lawrence Gann. He was kind of the first builder of the project. So he came on and he set it up for us and kind of assembled all the scenes. And the second editor was my wife, Sarah. And so she's a brilliant editor. And since we live together and we can work all the time on it, she would come home after work and I'd be setting stuff up during the day. I would do rough cuts on things, or I would kind of outline some stuff and work with her there. And the way that we shot it was, you know, I kind of had the cut in my head. My background is editing. So when I think of a scene, I actually can play it through in my head as a cut. And so I know what angles I need, and I know what safety coverage I need, just in case I need to cut around. Sure. So, I mean, there were certain shots in the film where we had other ideas, but we got our safeties, and the safeties ended up being then our bigger ideas. And so we ended up kind of working on that. And I don't know, that's just kind of, like, when it comes to the camera angles, that's just my visual style. That's the way I like things to look. I like to give things, like, I really want to push scope. And I want to push, you know, the grandness of Camp Crystal Lake, which was something that was really important to me. That camp was very big and expansive, so we wanted to make it feel that way. So there are certain angles that you would choose to do that, certain organic way to lead the character through a scene. You know, the camera work is very specific because each scene, I would say, in the first 20 minutes of the movie is setting something up that's going to pay off in the back 20 minutes of the movie. Right. So we always wanted to make sure the eye is led towards the things we need to see, or leading up to give you the you know, showing just a certain angle or a certain perspective that leaves things kind of out of sight to allow you to build suspense. Yeah. That, and then, yeah, and then, you know, it came into it like using the drones and things like that to give it scope. That was to make it feel like you're out in the middle of the forest. And And that was the purpose. It was to make it feel like we were getting farther and further away from society, which is a big key element to Friday the 13th Part 1. One of the key elements that Victor Miller always harps on is, I think it's Officer Dorf or something, or I can't remember his name. I feel bad because I'm not doing it right. But he comes into the scene, and Victor Miller hates that scene because it says, look, like safety is just a minute away. Like it just kills all the momentum. And I wanted to capture that feeling because I wanted him to feel like he was away from people and he wasn't going to find help. And there's no one out there that's going to help him because he's all alone. And that was kind of what pushed those scenes. And so going back together and then being able to work with things with my wife, it's, visually it's one thing, and you can play the film through visually and have it there, but it's an editorial when you start adding in the music and you start adding in the sound effects and you start adding in the color details and some of the extra, finesse and VFX and things that we did, just the little things. We didn't do anything too crazy. We just pushed a couple scenes a little further with a little bit of extra juice. Like we had some ghosting effect on Kyle when he smashes his head after falling, to give him that woozy look to give it that sense. So yeah, it's kind of all in there, and each scene has its own story to be told. And so, I wanted to visually tell that story. I'm a visual storyteller, and I wanted to say it with as little dialogue as possible. And when dialogue is necessary, that's when we cut to the confessionals. And those were fun because when we handed over to, there were a lot of things so many things were improvised by Drew, like, like like all that stuff. Like those were things like when we watched an editorial, they weren't scripted, but we just laugh out loud and we're like, all right, remember this moment. We enjoyed this for the first time you watched it. So we're putting that in. We're going to put that in. And, I always encourage Drew. I was like, put your personality into this. Like my words are just tent poles. Like you just need to get this information across. I need you to put it in your language. Yeah. So this, and a lot of the time, there's a lot of scripted stuff there, but when he would go off script and start to do some of his own stuff, that's where I would say the personality got elevated and it became Drew and it became his character and he became Kyle. And I think that's what makes him so lovable. I love how he flicks things. Like I just thought that was hilarious. I was like, hey, anytime you see something, you want to just touch it, poke it. Like you can't help but want to touch and be curious. And I think that's a really great part of your character. So we built that into a few more scenes after he did it in one, and kind of went from there. And it just, I don't know. I think that he just did such a good job of carrying it. So I couldn't be more proud of him.
Yeah, no, it was phenomenal. The acting was great. I mean, you just, like I said, the whole organics of it and the set and everything. I have just a couple more things for you. I'm going to touch on a bunch of questions that were asked.
Great.
Just the part where, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Let's just go on to the question over here. And then
okay,
yeah. So were there any surprises along the way when you were doing your Kickstarter campaign? Things that you didn't expect at all or anticipate?
The entire process. I can't tell you how many things came up along the way. And I think that anyone who's an aspiring filmmaker should pay close attention right now. What we had planned when we did our first Kickstarter in October, which failed, we fell $10,000 short of our goal. We tried to make $40,000 on that to do the whole thing. We made 30 and then fell short, which was kind of a bummer. And that would have been a really good time to give up, but we didn't. And we reached out to some people who backed us, and they decided to back us privately and become a part of the show. And we went through the fall, and you couldn't predict how many things would go wrong. The blue Bronco that opens up the film, this beautiful car that my neighbor owned. And I was like, I got to put that in a movie. I got to shoot this thing. It's so cool looking. I have access to it. He gives me the key. I can drive it whenever I want. That thing broke down on us maybe 3 times.
Oh, no.
The last time it broke down on us, Drew and I were driving up to the set. I would say it was maybe 11 p.m. at night. I just got out of work. I picked up Drew. We were driving out there. It's like middle of November. It's 30 degrees out. That has no top on it. So we're just got the heat blasted. We're all like, we look like the kid from A Christmas Story, we're like all packed in with our gloves and hats. And we're driving up, and I have a coffee in my hand, and I'm just talking to Drew, and we're talking about the film. And we were actually talking about some of the things that were kind of messing up on us. Like we would have 1 week a monitor would go out. So we wouldn't be shooting with a monitor. I'd have to lurk over the camera and shoot. Or, we had one version where the monitor, which we recorded through, it messed up all the footage. So we lost a whole day of driving footage just because we got a fuzzy signal, and it ended up breaking up all the stuff.
Yeah.
And so as I'm having this conversation with him, all of a sudden you hear this crack, and we're all of a sudden drifting into the other lane. And so I'm turning the wheel and I get no response. And I'm like, what the hell? And so coming up is this turn that just goes like this. And if you go straight, you're going to jump into the gully. You're going to jump right into the middle of the valley. And I slammed on the brakes. And this is a 70-something Ford Bronco. So it doesn't have, anti-lock brakes. It doesn't have, it's just, and hope you stop. And we were barreling towards this guardrail, and eventually, something just hit the ground, or the wheels turned, and we got shot across the other side of the road and went into a ditch. And we, didn't hit the guardrail. Luckily, we didn't crash. There was no major damage. And when we checked, the steering rod had snapped.
Oh, no.
And that's what happened. And so so I'm sitting there on the side of the road at like 11:30 at night, waiting for the second crew to drive up and hopefully see us, because there's no cell coverage out there. And sitting there, you're like, what am I going to do? I planned this whole weekend to shoot this car. What other props do I have? What can we do? So we ended up, so we really had to rally there and come up with a couple of things to shoot that weekend. We didn't shoot everything we wanted to. And that was basically how our fall went. I mean, I could basically sum up every shot we did that fall had something go wrong. There was a time that I cut my arm on a piece of glass while we were building a set. And I was literally directing with my arm wrapped up in a towel, trying to hold the blood in. And I ended up, we shot through the night, and then I went to the emergency room at 1 o'clock in the morning and got, 8, 9 staples in my arm, and went back out and directed the next day. There's a scene where I'm playing Jason, and I grab Kyle. Well, we forgot to switch out the prop knife. So he had the real knife, and he went like this. And when I grabbed him, I went chink and grabbed him, and the knife went into my hand. And so we finished the scene. And then I yell cut, and then I'm like, ah, and you see Jason kind of hunch over and walk out of the room. Like, what's wrong with Jason? And I pull off the glove, and there's my hand bleeding because I've just got stabbed. So it was all these different things that were basically saying almost trying to stop us from making the film. And then we went and we cut our second trailer. We, we had a really successful second Kickstarter campaign, which we learned so much from our failures. So from the failure of the October campaign that didn't go through, from the failures that we learned in the fall of not getting everything we wanted and not really being satisfied with what we were getting, but getting enough to show that we had the potential. So we really hung on to that. We regrouped. The winter came, the entire campus was covered in snow, so we couldn't shoot anyway. And it gave us time to just kind of reset and think. And we went back out in the spring. We went in with a little bit of a different strategy. We kind of went up with our guard up a little bit more, saying I expect things to go wrong now. And I expect that not everything is going to be great. So when I go in, I'm not going in with just plan A. I'm going in with plan B, C, D, and E. And if that doesn't happen, then we're going to do this. And if that doesn't happen, we're going to do this. And learning how to compromise and work within the box that we were going to be allowed, because ultimately we didn't have control of much. We don't have control of the weather. We don't have control of time. We don't have control of the sun angles. We don't have control of all this stuff. So we really had to just be patient and take it one scene at a time. And each scene brought its own challenges. Each scene brought its own, things that got in our way. But I think because we got battle tested through the fall, we had a little bit more resolve in the spring, where we were able to work through it and keep the quality up. It wasn't that we couldn't get the footage. It was just that I felt that sometimes things were getting in our way in the fall that kept us from reaching the quality that we wanted. So we ended up doing a lot of shooting in the spring, and the shooting in the spring so outweighed the shooting in the fall. I ended up going out in August and reshooting 2 or 3 scenes, because we had them down. We knew how to do them, and we only needed a crew of 3 people to actually shoot them. But we were able to go and shoot these scenes to catch it up, to get it to the quality level that we brought it to in the spring. And that became a testament of us failing a bunch of times and being challenged a bunch of times and getting thrown to the ground with our faces in the mud a bunch of times and just getting back up and going at it again. And as long as we kept doing that, and we knew that as long as we get, and it started, I couldn't tell you, at the beginning of the spring, we had 6 dates that were, 6 weekends that were huge and had big stunts and very complicated things that needed to be, handled by the producers and figured out in the logistics. Right. And as a whole, it seemed impossible. But when you broke them down into the individual weekends, and we broke down those tasks into the individual shoot days, we were able to just take it one bite at a time, and we were able to tackle it there. We didn't worry about what was coming up 3 weeks from now. We were just focusing on what was right now. And then we look up and it's August and we're done shooting. And then it was into post. And then same thing. Post had its own issues and things that kept coming up. And again, it was I think until the day before we released, we were still making tweaks. We were still, you know, fixing things and catching things and trying to make sure that what we were releasing was going to be good enough for the fans. But what we didn't want to do was hold anything back or delay anything or do that. We kind of had to just be like, this is what it is. This is what it's going to be. And we just got to let it go, and we got to let the fans decide now. And it's a very stressful process. It's really, you know, nerve-wracking, especially when you're tackling something like a Friday the 13th fan film, because there's so many diehard fans. They're going to be very particular about things. And it was very important to me to make sure that fans walked away from this feeling like it belonged there, and feeling like we weren't just some guys making a fan film just to do it, that we were actually trying to cheer the fans up because there was no Friday the 13th this year. And that if they could walk away from Friday the 13th in 2017 with a smile on their face, well, that was a hell of a lot better than wishing that there was a film that year. And that's the motivator. I mean, that was the big motivator, was not letting the fans down, because we had just been let down so much in the last 9 years. And I get it. I mean, I get the studio system. I work in this industry. I see what happens. I understand. And from a producing standpoint and from a business standpoint, I get all the decisions that were made. I totally get it. But who suffers are the fans, and we have to wait and we have to wait and we have to wait. Yep. So it just became about like, all right, somebody's just got to do something. And so it's not that we went out there with the intention to do this, because like I said, when we first started doing this, there was a film coming out and we were just trying to do something fun that people would enjoy. It wasn't until they canceled it and we started getting a lot of support from fans that we decided to kick it up a notch. And, you know, I wanted to showcase myself as a director. My crew wanted to showcase themselves as the VFX artist, Kelsey Burke, you know, Jessica Bennett on stunts, Chris Cathellis and JD Martz on camera. I had a great gaffer, this kid, Matt Richardson, who came on and just absolutely killed it. And all the other volunteers, the other people that came out, they all just got so invested in not only, you know, telling a good story and making a good film, but showcasing that they might be young, but they're very skilled and they know what they're doing. And they wanted to put as much of the passion that I had in for it, that it, you know, themselves. And so, you know, that was another thing that was inspiring, was getting a crew out there that was just dedicated, not only to just making a fan film, but doing something of quality.
Yeah, no, for sure. And as you were speaking, a question somewhat came across. Why do you think the character of Jason still resonates with, you know, each subsequent generation? And you know what? I think you really, really delved deeply into what that is, because, I mean, you know, like you said, for the past 9 years, Friday the 13th hadn't come out, and there wasn't a Friday the 13th. And if the fans could take away, you know, 2017 with a film at least, you know, and don't forget, you know, my buddy there, Kevin R. Phipps in Hollywood, also came out with the documentary.
That's right.
It was it's a different thing, because it was a memoriam to Richard Brooker, more so a documentary, but yours was a film for the fans. But these were also, like, these are also good things, because like you said,
yeah,
these fans, they need it.
Well,
you know? They need
touching on that, I actually had the opportunity to work on that. I met Sean Richards at the day we launched the Kickstarter. I met Sean Richards at a Part 3 screening. And so I went dressed as Never Hike Alone Jason to the screening. I got to take a picture with Larry Zerner. I met Sean. And so I was up front with Sean, who's the producer on the project. And we were just talking, and he was like, I was like, hey man, I'm working on a you know, a personal fan driven project too. You should check it out. And I gave him the link, and he kind of like watched some of it on his phone, but he didn't really have a chance to like really look at it. And then he got home that night, watched the thing, and just immediately like wrote me an email and was like, dude, I didn't realize like this is like, he's a big Friday the 13th fan, and it's driven from the same stuff. So Sean, actually, we started exchanging favors for each other. So Sean was looking for some extra footage. I said, listen, I got some time in between now and Never Hike Alone. I can go shoot some stuff for you. He told me a location that he had shot at out in Arizona that he wanted to get some pickup stuff. So I contacted another friend of mine that I met through this project out there. We went up and shot. So anybody who watches this documentary, they do a great, like, I love the opening sequence. Their title sequence is beautiful. And then it was already beautiful, okay, like before we ever came on. And then they allowed us to go out and shoot some stuff, and I shot some bonus footage, and it ended up in the intro. And it, like, to be a part of that was really great. And there's some really great shots of a friend of mine, Renee Rivas, who who played Jason for me. We dressed him up like Richard Brooker and did some photography of him. And then Renee provided some drone shots of a lake and things like that to give it a little bit more scope to help Sean out. And really just like, and Sean came out and helped grip on the project. You know, he was there and helped out. We actually ended up giving Sean a ride to Arizona for when we shot one of the scenes, so he could go down and interview CJ Graham in person. And I hooked him and Renee up. And Renee was the one who helped him go shoot it. So what I love about what's going on right now is that you have Friday the 13th, a game, which is built by fans, which was funded by fans, which is now released and you can play it. And I was actually just playing it before this, just, you know, blowing off some steam because I hadn't had a chance to play with Ted White Jason yet. And I need that double XP because I don't get to play it as much. So you have that. Then you have our show, and you have the Part 3 documentary. You have things like the Lost Chapter Project coming out. That's a fan film. You have Voorhees. You get another set of kids. You know, Cody Fox project. I know another set of guys who have a really great fan film idea, a nice little short that I think will be fun. It's very different. And I've been contacted by several other filmmakers who are all inspired to make their own Friday the 13th. And I just think that right now the only thing keeping Friday the 13th alive are the fans.
That's right.
And I don't think that that's a bad thing, because I think in our hands, we will tread lightly. We will handle it with kid gloves. We will make sure that we don't try to break anything. We really care about it. And on the other side, when you're kind of coming into the project and it's more about, we need to make as much money as possible and we need to do X, Y, and Z as much as possible, you kind of lose sight of what really makes these films sing for the fans. And if you really want to get a franchise that's going to continue on, you have to treat your fans with respect. So in terms of answering the question, which I want to get to, is how does it transcend through different generations? It transcends through different generations because it may change through that time, but it always remains to its core values. So like you look at the first 5 films, which are all the exact same formula, exact same tone, like nothing really much changes from the way it goes. And then you bring in Part 6 and you have Tom McLaughlin, who kind of turns the dial a little bit, turns the production value up, gives it a new look, gives Jason some new powers, gives Jason a new identity, but yet doesn't go against too much what the franchise was doing. And I think as you build it up from there, you can kind of see the branch kind of starting to get away from the tree a little bit and split. And I think that it had been so long since we tried to do something that was closer to the branch that it felt like we were never going to get back there. But the way you transcend it to an audience is that you find out what that fear means to an audience now. Yeah. So I think that Jason iconically is scary. You know, there's just something about this guy who, when he looks at you, you're scared. You look into those dark eye holes and you know he's coming after you. And he scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. And if you know, I was a kid now, I can't imagine not turning on, you know, Part 6 or Part 4, seeing it and still being just as scared. It just needs to make sense to a new generation. It needs to connect with a new generation, but it can't forget about the old one. It can't leave them in the dust because you need them. You need them to show up and you need them to support it. But you also need the new fans who are going to not only start to like it, but they're going to be the old fans one day. And they're going to have to carry the baton. So there has to be a new generation of Friday the 13th fans that are going to carry it on and care about it and be influenced by it. And I don't think that if Jason wasn't effective and if Jason wasn't scary, we wouldn't be sitting here talking right now. He is just inherently scary. And you talk about all the slashes that came out in the 80s, all the slashes that have come out since then. I don't know. There's something about Jason, his story, his setup, his like where he is, like his setting, all that stuff that just kind of comes together for this perfect formula. And even, you know, even if you make a slasher about a new slasher today, you can try to rebuild all those things, but I don't think any slasher or story like that does it as good as Friday the 13th. It's just such a simple thing that we can all understand, and they all bring their own, you know, pieces to it. But I don't know. For me, it's Friday and everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
so,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That was a good time to jump in.
That's funny because that segues into a question that was said earlier by Glenn the Day Tripper. He asked, you know, would you ever tackle Freddy? You know, icon like.
I would love to. Freddy's my number 2. You know, he's my side chick. When it comes to horror, I love Freddy. I love his personality. Robert Englund, obviously, just, you know, so iconic. And that avenue of just, you know, going into people's dreams, you know, for me as a filmmaker, you know, aside from, you know, Freddie and all that stuff, I think that the ability to go into a dream gives the filmmaker just this beautiful palette to work with, because you no longer have to go within the bounds of reality. And there's a little bit of a reality shake in Never Hike Alone. And that was like one of the scenes I was looking forward to the most, because it was so stylized and different, but built on top of something that we would remember from the past. And that's kind of what happened with Never Hike Alone. Was I wanted to take elements of the franchise and just be like, what does that mean today? And if those filmmakers had the tools of today, what would it look like? Not reinvent it, but just do what they would have if they had more firepower. Even though we really didn't have any money, but that just goes to show you how far technology has taken us. So now let's apply that to Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh, sorry, you lost me?
You kind of glitched out, sorry.
Okay, so I'll just to repeat it. You know, there was a scene in Never Hike Alone I was kind of talking about. I won't get too into it, but we got to push the bounds of reality. And that was based off of something from the original series. And so what we did was we took elements from the original films and said, well, what could we do with those today? Because the technology is advanced and we can do things easier and cheaper. I mean, we only made this film for $40,000, and we were able to do things from the 80s that cost $2-3 million, you know, to do a production like this. Sure. So imagine what you can do now in a Nightmare on Elm Street world, the way you can push the bounds of reality, not even so much get too much into saying you have to do it all with CGI or you have to do big effects. It all comes into the lighting and the sets that you can build and the types of prosthetics you can build and the things you can do now that are in camera that are quicker, easier, and cheaper. And that is going to be the rebirth of the slasher franchise, is now giving that tone and that attitude from the 80s of, all right, this film, we're really going to push it. You know, like one really good example is actually while I was at Telluride this weekend, I got to see Victor Crowley. And even since, you know, 2003 and 2007, when he made the first two, and now what Hatchet looks like now, it's like even that was extended, and the types of kills that he was able to pull off in that film and the types of gore that he was able to pull off to make, you know, to really push that side of it. You know, Adam Green was able to push the envelope. And I think that that's the greatest thing about these films, is that you can push the envelopes of fear and you can push the envelopes of things that frighten you. So not only seeing the gory things, but also the camera work that you can do, the way you can build these sets now, the way that you can, you know, tell these stories and not have to be so constricted, that you can expand it a little bit more. And the world has expanded and we've moved on. So you can bring it into this world. And again, take elements from the past and don't try to rewrite them, but just bring them and say, well, what are they like with a little bit more, you know, with a little bit more juice and a little bit, you know, more technology? What can we do? Right. And capture the spirit? That's how you rebuild these franchises. You build them where they were and you just lift them up and you give them the new parts. It's like restoring an old car. You know what I mean? It's, you don't, you know, you don't take an old, you know, Chevelle and start putting Lamborghini wings on it. Like you just polish the body and you make it look good again. And it's a classic car and it's got a new look, but it's still got that classic sense. And that's what you love about it. That's why people buy classic cars and they don't buy new cars. That's kind of the tone and the feeling of, I think, these iconic slashers, of why we want to bring them into this generation, is because we have an affinity for the classics.
No, absolutely. I agree. And all that whole time, you jogged my memory about what I wanted to say earlier. So quickly, if you could tell us, because I love, you know, abandoned places. I love to do those. I love to go into them and film them and whatnot. So speak quickly about the set, and also speak about, you already touched on let's talk about the ending just a little bit without giving too much away. And also the question, the hot question is a sequel. Okay,
we'll get into that one last.
Okay.
The first thing I'll get into is the camp. The camp is something we found halfway through production. So when we started in January of 2016, when we really started kind of putting the screws to this thing, I had a place in mind that looked great. I mean, it was a bunch of cabins, but the only difference was we didn't have access to the interiors. We were going to be allowed to shoot exterior. So the film was going to be very short. He was only going to do exteriors, and Jason was going to attack him pretty quickly. And what happened was when we shot our first trailer that we released in May of 2016, the people who we shot that trailer with, the people who own the cabins, were just joking around with us, and they asked us if we were going to go shoot at the camp, and we were like, we don't have money to shoot at a camp. We can't rent it out. And they were the ones who said, no, if you go up the street, there's an abandoned camp, and all the locals know about it, but people don't really know it's there. I'm sure you guys could just go up there and take it over and shoot some stuff. And, you know, it took us maybe 2 or 3 weeks to find it. But once we did, it was a gold mine. It was, you know, it was this pre-built set for us that had furniture, that had wood and all these materials and desks and shelves and things that all we had to do was bring elements up and fill them, or build a wall here, or reconstruct something here so we could just make it fit for this type of story we were telling. So we ended up, you know, spending the entire summer there scouting it to figure out what is the layout of our camp, what rooms do we want to visit on our trip down memory lane, and let's just slowly build them one by one. So that was really great. And, you know, finding the camp was amazing. It's, you know, at first it was a crazily intimidating and scary because you don't know, you feel like you're in your own horror movie at that point.
Yeah.
But slowly but surely that place became a second home. I mean, I still drive up, I'm not even shooting there anymore, and I still go up and hang out there. And
Nice.
there's a lot of, I don't know, there's just a lot of dangerous stuff around there. There's broken glass, there's nails, there's things that if hikers go up there, they have risk of getting hurt. So, you know, over time, you know, me and a couple crew members will go up and we'll, you know, sweep up one cabin, pick up all the trash, get all the stuff out of it. If there's broken windows, we knock the rest of the glass out and try to scrape it all out and then board up that window so you can't cut yourself. And, you know, it's going to take maybe a couple months to do this, but we're going to go through it like building by building, room by room, window by window. And just by the time we're done, we want it to be, you know, a tourist stop for people to go in and be able to like hang out there if they're just hiking through camp. And if people are like, we want to go visit the Never Hike Alone set, well, they can go up there without fear of stepping on a nail or cutting themselves on glass or doing that and see some of the stuff that we left behind. And, you know, we left some of the sets up as they are. Some of those crime scenes are still there, you know, as fun because we want people to kind of discover them and maybe get a little spook out of it. But, you know, we're going to leave signs up there that say, like, you know, this was the set of Never Hike Alone. And don't worry, like, nothing bad happened up here. Like, feel free to walk around and check things out. Like, this is public land. Like, this belongs to everybody. We want to share it with everybody. And we appreciate, you know, the locals giving us as much time as they did to finish the film. And, you know, we want to pay them back by, you know, leaving it better than we found it. And it's already getting there. It already is way better than when we found it. I mean, it was really bad when we got there. But we think we're doing a pretty good job, and it's going to take some time because it's you know, you got to move little by little. But just like the movie, we're just going to, you know, chip away and get it and go from there. When it came to the ending, without giving too much away, I wanted an ending that, you know, I said this to my friend when I was in the process, and I came up with the idea for the ending, and I got access to all of the things that appear in the ending and kind of happen. And I turn to him and I say, man, you know, more than anything in the world, I just want to knock the entire fan base on their ass.
Which you did.
And blow them away. I want them to walk away from this going, holy shit, how did this happen? Like,
that was incredible.
So, you know, so it really came into like the situation, which I thought would be a lot of fun. I thought it would change it up a little bit because of where we had been the entire time. I thought it would bring a familiarity to the tone and things like that. I also got a chance, like the thing I was talking about before, in the final scene, like one of my favorite moments is in there because of the way I was able to take an old concept and just give it a little bit more energy and give it a little bit more atmosphere and intensity of what it's like to experience that experience. And that's only like a little part of the ending. And then from there, it was about, you know, I think that the theme of this film is that, you know, Jason is relentless, you know, and once he gets his sights on you, it's just never going to stop. So we wanted to really continue that in and send the audiences off thinking that, like, you know, Friday the 13th is back, and this is the Jason we want to see, and this is the tone we want to see. And if, you know, if no one gives me
the hairs are standing on my arms, and I'll tell you, dude,
cool.
Go ahead. Sorry, well, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's fine. And, you know, it's really like, you know, we got a lot of great write-ups this weekend, and we had a lot of really important people from great magazines and vlogs and blogs and people just say wonderful things. But I cannot tell you, the best things I love to read is when I get messages from fans that say, hey man, I was born in the 70s. I grew up with all the Friday the 13th. I went to them all in the theater, and I haven't felt this way since the 80s. I don't, and the thing is that I can't tell you specifically what that formula is. I just know it came from somewhere in here.
Oh yeah.
And I just trusted my instincts, and I said, this is what is true. Actually, one of our associate producers, his name's Christian Asciano. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, Christian. I never know how to pronounce your last name, but he volunteered for the project, and he came on, and he's a gigantic Friday the 13th fan. He's got more Friday the 13th signatures than anyone I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, he's like, he makes it his job, and he was my tent pole. He was like my on-set fan. I was like, would Jason do that? And he'd shake his head no, and we'd be like, all right, we're going to change it, because if you're not satisfied, the fans aren't going to be satisfied. So that was really important to us. Yeah, and so the ending, I mean, really, we wanted to celebrate. I mean, I wanted to give fans, a reason to celebrate. Not just watch a fan film that was good and well executed, but also like a real reason to go, fuck yeah, like hell yes, this is what we want, like type thing. And
you want to see a fan reaction? When I saw what I saw, I was like, no way, dude. I was blown away, man. My girlfriend, she jumped. She was like, what? I was like, no way. You're not kidding me. That's my reaction.
Yeah, and in Telluride, when we did our first live screening, audible gasps were good. There's another, like, I actually just got a reaction video. So the scene before the final scene, which is like another one of my favorites, like I've seen people like jump out of their seat, like, which is nice, which is good, which is like, that's what got Friday the 13th started, was, the ending where, you got a good jump scare, you know what I mean? Yep. So we were glad that we got a good jump scare in there, for like the right reasons. It wasn't just like, just in there to be in there. It was one of my favorite scenes, because if you look at the camera work in there, that's one that's very well mapped out in the way that we did it, for the setup of it. And I think any cinematographers out there, or filmmakers in there, will kind of see the way that we positioned things a very specific way, and then kind of like we kind of jumped the line a little bit at the end on purpose, because we do like a swap, but it's a cool little thing. And then to touch on a sequel, I will just say this: yes, there is one. There is definitely a story. There is. I have it pretty much figured out. I know how it would start. I know how it would end. I know what's in the middle. And I know how it all blends together. I don't really have a script, but I didn't have a script for Never Hike Alone at the start of, January, and the script changed all throughout the process. So we do it. So I feel confident that with the idea that I have, based on what we see in the end of the film, all those elements are going to be tied together. And we're going to tell, what I want to tell is a feature length story of how this story not only restarts Friday the 13th, but how it now ties into how everything's going to come together and how the story would continue. The issue with that is one, I mean, we're an independent film studio. It took all of our resources just to get this one made. We're very tired. We need some time to regroup. We've got a lot of requests for us to release a Blu-ray or a DVD, some type of physical copy, for Never Hike Alone, which takes some logistical homework, because we obviously, the whole goal for this whole time was to make sure that no matter what we did it within the parameters that the franchise would allow. So we banged the loudest drums that we could to say, 1, we're doing this. 2, we're going to raise money for it. And 3, we're going to release it online. And 4, we're going to extend it, and all these different things. So we made as many public announcements in the press as possible. We posted online as much as possible. I talked to alumni. I talked to anyone I could about it, just to make sure that somehow people knew this was going on, that ran this franchise, and if they wanted to stop it, and I would listen to them, and I would say whatever they wanted me to do, because I have respect for them, and I don't want to step on their toes, and I don't want to do anything bad for the franchise. If anything, I want more fans to now be fans of the franchise by doing this. And I hope that, a couple more Friday the 13th sell off the shelves this week, because people want to get into the series and learn more about it, because they didn't really know much, and this might have been their first one. I mean, my first Friday the 13th was part 7. And I remember like a killer buried but not dead, and this place is cursed, and like the whole Walt Gorney, VO there, that sucked me into the franchise. And even though part 7 is not my favorite, I love that opening, and that opened my eyes to Friday the 13th. It was the first time in that montage I saw Ted White kick through a door, or CJ Graham crush someone's head, and all these different things. And I was like, what is this? I need to know more about it. I need to see more. Like, what is this? And obviously I had to rewatch them like 20 times, because none of the continuity ever made up. But as I got older, I understood a little bit more about it. Yeah. I'm kind of getting off topic, but but to get into it, we want to make sure that if we're going to do a Blu-ray or a DVD, or we're going to reopen a Kickstarter and kind of give people a chance to be a part of it through that, that again, we're not stepping on the toes of the franchise. We're not stepping on Sean Cunningham's toes. We're not ruining anything for Warner Brothers and New Line once they get the rights back. We want this to be a self-contained thing. And I would say the only unfortunate event of this entire production in the end is that my hope was that we would raise a ton of money and I'd be able to make a good sized donation at the end of it to the Penny Pines reforestation program, so they could go out and we could help fund some reforestation in areas where there are wildfires burning. I mean, right now there are fires burning in Northern California.
Yeah.
So we raised $19,000, which was a good amount, but we spent all of it. I mean, it all went into the film. And I kind of figured that when we only got 19, because if you think about it, we raised 19, but Kickstarter takes a cut. We had to buy all of the shirts and all of the things that all the rewards. So at the end of it, we walked away with our original goal, which is about $13,000. We used that to fund most of the spring. And then there was money that I had raised privately and saved privately for my career that I said, you know what, I'm investing in myself. I can either spend this money on going to grad school, film school, and who knows what I walk out of there with, or I could just spend it on myself and shoot what I want. I don't have to listen to a syllabus. I don't have to listen to a professor. No one has to tell me how to make films. I'm just going to go off my instincts and see if I'm a filmmaker or not. This was a test for me. And so back to the subject, which is, so the money got spent. And so there's nothing really there for us to make the donation, which I was really hoping for. So right now we're paying it back by going out and physically volunteering. But if I had the chance to go back and release a Blu-ray and a DVD and do shirt sales again and poster sales again and release a new poster and things like that, you know, I think that would give us an opportunity to not only give the fans what they want, have them just pay for the physical production of what it would be for a Blu-ray. Maybe we go back in and clean a couple things up. Maybe I kind of tweak with the sound design a little bit, which I could probably do for on the cheap. Build it so we can get a good Blu-ray 4K copy, and give, you know, fans who missed out on the original Kickstarter a chance to get a shirt, a poster, or thing. Raise as much money as we can, pay for the production of what it takes to get all those things made, and then take the rest of that money and go save some, you know, national forests and help bring them back for future generations. Because, you know, part of this film was a love for the forest. I love hiking. I love nature. I love being in it. And, you know, you say whatever you want about wherever your politics fall. I mean, like, how can you not love nature and want to take care of where you live? Exactly. How can you not want to live in a place that's pollution free and trash free and pristine and beautiful? I mean, I was just up in Telluride, Colorado. Oh, like, can I die there? Can I just go there and just be there for the rest of my life? Because it's just nature and it's beautiful. And, you know, you really feel this, you know, I think it kind of grounds you in a way when you're out there and you realize that, like, we're a part of this kind of bigger system here. And so it's a no-brainer for us to want to give back, because, you know, the forests of the San Bernardino National Forest allowed us to make this film. The look, the feel, everything about it is because nature is there and because it's there. And if we don't take care of it, we're not going to be able to enjoy it, you know? And exactly. You know, I wanted to do something there, and I feel bad that we weren't able to do it out of the first one. But if we're allowed, and I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to go down the avenues of following up with the legality of it and maybe get permission to do it. But I think now's a good time than any. It's going to take some time. It's not something that's going to happen next week. We're not going to launch a new Kickstarter within the next 2 weeks or anything like that. It's probably going to take a month at least. And we're going to have to go through the process of coming up with everything that we're going to do. But, you know, it's the big question I'm getting right now is, can I get a Blu-ray? Can I get a Blu-ray? Can I get a DVD? And the answer right now is I don't want to get sued. So we're going to take our time with it. But yeah, if the fans want it, I'm going to pursue it, and I'm going to look at it, because that's what I've done this entire time. Every message, every suggestion I took to heart. You know, I said, okay, this is what the fans want. How can I work it in? I mean, I basically treated the fans like they were my producers. And obviously you can get some weird suggestions, and producers give weird suggestions too. And you have to weed the good out with the bad, but fans have great ideas. And every fan sees the franchise in a different way. Each one has a different film, a favorite Jason. So, you know, you get different tastes, but I think that what we tried to go through was like a taste that even if it wasn't your favorite thing, you'd still enjoy it. So it wasn't like your favorite look, like like Jason's too lean. Well, I kind of like it that way. I don't like when Jason's big and bulky. It kind of looks weird. Like we gave him weight, we gave him size, but he didn't need to be like Mongo, like 6'8", 280, because then I don't know. That's not the Jason I remember. Like CJ Graham and I are the same height, So I think that I want Jason Part 6 is my favorite. I mean, CJ Graham's big, but he's not like gigantic in that film. He's pretty thin and lean, and the shirt's kind of tucked in tight to him. So kind of wanted to go for that look with an updated look and feel. So there. So I think I'm sorry, I'm just starting to ramble because I can go on about Friday the 13th all day. Yeah.
Cool. I was hanging on every word, and so no, thanks very much. I really do want to thank you for taking the time and doing this. This is great. The fans out there love Friday the 13th, and we want to thank you for bringing it to light. And obviously, from a fan's point of view, you said a lot about how the fans produced and they helped out, and the Kickstarter, everything. You know what? Everything was beautifully put together tonight, and so basically, I want to just to ask you if you could just tell everybody out there where they can find you at wompstompfilms.com, I believe. But and also talk. Just tell. Do you have that where they can go and donate to the fund there for the?
Well, yeah. If you want to, if you research the Penny Pines Reforestation Project, there's a government page for it where you can, they give you the address where you basically send a check in. I think the minimum donation is $68.
Okay.
So definitely check that out. Just find, Penny Pines Reforestation Program. Just type that in. It will come right up. You won't have any trouble finding it. As far as it comes to Womp Stomp Films, yes, wompstompfilms.com. That's a great place where you'll find access to all of our social media pages where we are most active. Instagram, you're going to see a ton of behind the scenes stuff. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be posting behind the scenes photos of how we pulled off some of the stunts, some of the makeup, some of the effects and things that we held, obviously, up until the release. And we want a little bit more people to see it before we start doing that. So Instagram's a great place to follow us. Twitter, that's a great place to message us. I get a lot of messages through Twitter and support through Twitter. Share, if you want to send us an article, if you've written a blog or a review, just make sure to tag us at Womp Stomp Films or just hashtag Never Hike Alone. We love to hear what the fans are saying. We're looking into it. If we're allowed to make a sequel, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to read the criticisms. I'm going to see that and say, how can we get better? And then obviously we're on Facebook, another great place to see photos and just see messages from us or send us messages. And we'll post videos there as well. Our Instagram and Facebook are pretty well tied together. So either or, and everything is at Womp Stomp Films, WOMPSTOMP Films. I think you know how to spell that. YouTube /Womp Stomp Films. That's where you can find the film. And some of the other trailers and shorts that we've done and stuff like that.
I also wanted to know for your next Kickstarter, is there any kind of merchandise that people can buy so that way it's going to help contribute to the next possible sequel?
If we that I would do separately, I think. A sequel is a big task, at least the idea that I have. It's going to take a lot. And I don't know if I would like to involve the fans in some way, but I think it's going to involve some outside parties in order to get that done. We're definitely going to need special permission to get it done because I already think that we were tiptoeing on a line, especially with the things that people will find out about the film when they finish it. I think that we definitely are dancing on danger. And I think it's kind of the time for the studios to say, listen, like you guys either we support you, keep going forward, we'll help you and we'll help you make these things, or you guys are now crossing a line and you need to stop. And we need to respect that. I mean, that's the legality of it. That's the way fan films work. You can't go forward unless the studios allow it. And we're only allowed to be here and do this because the studios watched our trailer and said, you know what, I think this is going to do more good than bad for us. And I hope that that's why they let us do this. And I hope that we honored that thing, that they allowed us to do this, because you have to give thanks to that, because they could have stepped in at any time and said, stop. And they didn't. So as much as fans want to be angry with the studios for not creating a new film, thank the studios for allowing us to do this. Because that shows you that they do still care and that they still want fans to be happy, and they might not feel great about where things are at, but hopefully, this is just a good start to see a new beginning. for Friday the
Pardon
13th.
the pun.
So that, yeah. What was the other part of the question? I'm trying to.
Essentially, oh no, you answered it. I was just
Okay.
merchandise for the.
Oh, actually, no. I was going to answer is that we actually have some leftover merchandise from our first Kickstarter. So we're very low on shirts, but I think I have like 10 pins left. I have about 40 posters and some stickers. And actually, some people have already ordered some stuff, which I actually have to fulfill now that I'm back home. So anybody who ordered stuff who's watching or hears this, I did get your order. I'm going to process it this week. But yeah, we're just selling out the rest of our inventory just to do that. And that we'll see what we get out of that. I'm not sure how much money we're actually gonna be able to raise, but that could be a couple $100 that we're able to throw Penny Pines' way.
Well, right on. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask one more question that was asked earlier. I'm going to ask you one more question, and you don't have to go dial. It's really the end up. It's the leading to the end of the interview, if you will. Jen Peace would like to know what you're doing for Halloween, and I'm going to tell you what you guys are going to be doing for Halloween. You don't have to do this, Vincent, but I'd love for you to join. And starting, October 25th, Sean Rockinboxes presents. We are going to have a spectacular fun-filled week of interviews, back-to-back interviews. So guys, please tune in to Rockinboxes Presents. We've got Johnny Alonso kicking it off on October 25th. Tom McLaughlin, director of Friday the 13th Part 6, is going to be with me. We got Lorene Landon and also Helen Udi and a couple of other interviews that I'm trying to solidify and get coming up. So let's see, Vincent, what are you doing for Halloween, brother?
Well, the weekend before Halloween, we are going to be hosting a live Never Hike Alone screening at the Los Feliz Vista in Los Angeles, California. So if you missed out on Telluride Horror Show, we're going to do a screening, and I think it's a 200-person theater. And there's so if you've seen this film online or you haven't seen it yet, see it in the theater if we come near you, because we built this film for the theater as well. I mean, we had a sound design that was very specific, so when we brought it into the theater, that it would carry over. You know, the visuals obviously carry over to a larger screen. We're able to work with the larger scope. It's a great experience. Andrew's going to be there. I'm going to be there. A lot of the cast and crew are going to be there. So if you have questions and you want to find out stuff about the film, it's a perfect time to do it. So we're going to do it then. Halloween night, I don't know. I'm going to get dressed up, maybe go visit some friends or do something. My focus is just getting it there. We might also do another screening in Flagstaff, Arizona, fairly soon. Maybe the weekend of Halloween. I got to see how it's going to work. I got to figure out my schedule. They kind of fell back to back. But once I get dates, again, those will be up on wompstomp.com and wompstompfilms.com and the Facebook. And just, I think for the first time, because I've been working on this film for like 18 months straight, like in different ways of shape or form and working full time. This is the first time I haven't had to work on it. So I think I'm going to enjoy the next 2 weeks. I'm actually going to Boston to visit my family next week. This week, see some people. Hopefully maybe even hold a screening out there that I'm still working on, which we'll obviously do another post if we're going to be in the New England area hosting a screening. Go to a couple haunts. And just enjoy the season now. I mean, it's time. I mean, this is the best part of the year.
Yeah, a lot of people love it. I would love to thank you. And anytime you have anything, you come back to me here and we'll promote you out and get it out there. Everybody loved you this evening. And guys, go check out the film, Never Hike Alone. Don't go anywhere, Vincent. Stick with me after the broadcast as well. To all you people out there that were asking questions, it was a pleasure. As usual, from Rockinboxes Presents, I always say, be good to one another, guys. I love you guys. And I can't say hit the music because I always do that. But anyway, Vincent, a last word?
Thank you for having me out here. And thank you to everyone who has watched this film and given us support. We hear you loud and clear, and we're extremely appreciative of everything you guys have said and all the support throughout the entire way. So thank you. And thank you, Sean, for having me on the show. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
All right. Perfect.